Let's go racing! It's Super Mario Kart Funny Car Madness! Only on Super NES! Turn the track into a giant mud pit! Or burn rubber on ice, wood, or asphalt! Mix it up with the big boys! See Bowser in his Bigfoot-dropping truck! See Yoshi's go-kart really go! Mushrooms, banana peels, turtle shells! Dynamite! Check your rear view and make him eat dust! Or go into battle mode and ruin his day! 2 speeds! Fast and way too fast! It's 2-player fun on the split screen! Only for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System! Now you're playing with power, superpower!
Welcome to the lounge. How do you create a new genre in gaming? Well, I can't give you a definitive answer to that question, but a core feature of a new genre would probably be never before seen combinations of traits with each other. Developing new ideas or elevating old ones to a whole new level is important as well. By putting Mario, the most well-known video game character of all time, behind a steering wheel, we have a genius idea, which was not as obvious back then as you may think. He may be seen as a jack of all trades today, but this wasn't really established at the time. Therefore, Super Mario Kart is a prime example of a genre-creating game. It's the first game of the infamous Mario Kart series, which has the reputation of ruining friendships while still being one of the most beloved franchises of all time. It's hard to find someone who's never played a Mario Kart game, not even with friends or at a party. But what makes this game series so unique, and why is every installment one of the best-selling games of its system? I want to take a closer look at every game in the Mario Kart franchise to evaluate what they brought to the table, what made them stand out, and if it's worth playing them today. To streamline this comparison process, I want to combine all of my evaluation criteria and introduce the Spiny Shell Cup, in which the mainline Mario Kart games compete against each other based on their major features, such as single-player and multiplayer experience, track variety, character selection, item rotation, uniqueness, and innovation, flavored with my personal liking of the game, to give a well-rounded view of it all. Additionally, I want to elaborate in which Mario Kart game your driving skills are the most important and in which item luck can have the biggest impact on the results. In this video, I want to focus on the first game of the series, Super Mario Kart. It was the first video game I have ever played and therefore it is very special to me. It led to me discovering the magic of video games and ignited my love for Nintendo and the Mario Kart franchise, so I could say I'm a little biased. I'm trying to be as objective as possible though, while still giving you my subjective opinions about this game and later on its sequels. Super Mario Kart was released in 1992 in Japan and North America and 1993 in Europe. The development process of this game can be described as chaotic and as a happy little accident, since Nintendo originally was working on an F-Zero sequel featuring a 2-player mode. This didn't work out the way they intended though, and it got reworked into a Mario game, which outsold F-Zero about 3 times with its nearly 9 million copies and pretty much invented the kart-racer genre as a whole. Now this is an accident I like to see. Like F-Zero, the game used the, for the time, impressive Mod 7 mechanic, and by that is a true testament of time. A great strength back then, but nowadays a reason why many people are struggling with it. Even though it looks way better than racing games which didn't use the Mod 7 effect during that era, it didn't age well. After all, the racing genre profited heavily from the jump to 3D graphics, at least in my opinion. First of all, we have to look at the core gameplay mechanics. As I already mentioned, the Mod 7 graphics allowed the game to appear like it has a lot of depth, even though it was a 2-dimensional game, which was impressive and something that made the Super Nintendo stand out against its competitors. You only see the back of your characters and it seems like you're driving around the track, while in reality you only move and turn the map beneath you. You only really notice this if you pay attention and don't play yourself though. A brilliant way to make the game stand out and strengthen the immersion. While driving, you only use the upper half of the screen for your character, while the lower half is either used for the map to see where you and your rivals are, or for the second player. I don't know why it wasn't possible to use the whole screen for single player races, since it was done that way in F-Zero, but the map on the bottom is an elegant solution. This just shows that this game was strongly designed as a multiplayer game. Another nice touch is the combination of skill and luck required to master this game. You can get really skillful in this, as well as any other Mario Kart game, giving you a big advantage over your friends, but bad luck can always screw you over. It's the perfect combination of accessibility to everyone and long-term motivation for true fans of the series. Now I want to take a deeper look at the way the driving is handled. As I said, you move the map beneath you instead of your character. This works mostly fine, but leads to some minor problems. If a banana peel or something else you want to avoid is placed in front of you, it's way harder to dodge this than you expect, especially if you're on a straight part of the track. Taking a turn without slowing down also lets you slide through the turn, so that you're encouraged to drift or have to slow down to keep control over your vehicle. Drifting itself can be rewarding if it works out the way you want it to, otherwise it can get messy. You can get stuck on the inner border of a turn, which costs way too much time. If you don't manage to transition from drifting to driving straight successfully, you lose more time than you can gain. Oh, and mini turbos? They aren't invented yet, so you don't get a speed boost off your drift. The only profit you gain is keeping your speed and taking the turn more efficiently and elegantly, sometimes. But at least you get a nice little endorphin boost if your drifting works out, even though mini turbos are clearly the superior and right way to reward your skills in this department. You are driving fast and want to drift around a tight corner? Good luck. If an enemy is in front or anywhere near you, you'll probably fail, bump into them and lose a ton of time. In my experience, stopping to accelerate is oftentimes the most efficient way to get around tight corners, at least without losing control of your kart. If you hit another driver, you lose a coin pretty much every time, no matter the weight or speed of your character. If you drive on the part of the track where the CPUs want to drive, they bump into you over and over again until they can push you out of the way. This is especially frustrating when you fall down the track and get placed back onto the road, because then the CPUs will always drive straight into you, and more often than not you will fall down again instantly. If you fall down the track, Lakitu, who also presents the starting lights, picks you up again. As revealed in the manual, Lakitu is also the organizer and boss of the Mario Kart events. Boost starts are also implemented into Super Mario Kart. You get one if you hit the B button as soon as the first light is completely lit. If you manage to get a boost start but don't start in front, then your speed boost is gone as soon as you hit a driver directly in front of you who is nearly impossible to avoid. And the timing is pretty tight as well. But enough of that. The controls overall are not as good as modern ones, and how should they be? They were the first draft, and if you get used to them, they'll do the trick. The game features 2 game modes for single player and 3 for multiplayer. The single player modes are Grand Prix and Time Trial. 2 modes which are still around today for every installment of the series. Grand Prix mode offers you the choice between 50cc with weak AI, 100cc with medium AI, and after you've won all the trophies, 150cc with nearly impossible to beat AI. Every engine class awards you different trophies, winning at 150cc even grants you a fancy golden Mario head. Neat. Contrary to all other entries in the series, every cup features 5 tracks instead of 4, and you have to complete 5 laps on every course instead of the usual 3 laps per track. Therefore, the tracks are shorter than modern ones. If you want to challenge yourself even more, you can play as a small version of your character for the whole Grand Prix. If you're playing this way, you are slower and can get squashed by your opponents at any time. You unlock this possibility if you press A and Y at the same time while selecting your driver. But be warned, it's insanely difficult. On every track, you can drive over 1 question mark box per lap, which grants you an item, while some tracks offer a few additional item boxes. The items in this game are pretty basic, but they work fine. Ultimately, these items are the core distinguishers from other racing games and introduce the most random aspect of the genre. You can get the iconic banana peel, which makes you surprise spin out. There's also the green shell, which you can shoot in a straight line or place behind you, and the red shell, which seeks out a driver in front of you but easily gets blocked by walls. Sometimes, even if it should hit an opponent, they simply hop over the shell and it becomes useless. Both are not that great, to be honest. The red shell doesn't manage to hit anything unless it's directly in front of you, while I hit myself more often than my opponents with the green shell. But I do like the possibility of placing a green shell behind me. A pretty unique item is the feather, which lets you jump and is used for some shortcuts, which makes it way too situational for my liking. A mushroom gives you a speed boost, but be careful, it's only helpful on straight parts of the track. The star lights you up, spins around everyone you hit and makes you drive faster. And of course there's the lightning bolt, which shrinks every other driver, slowing them down and allowing you to drive them over, which is extremely overpowered while lasting almost an entire lap in my experience. There's a coin item as well, which will add 2 coins to a coin total. In multiplayer mode there's also the ghost item, which makes you invisible and steals an opponent's item. The coins are another core mechanic of the game. Around the tracks you can find a multitude of coins, each one increasing your speed up to a maximum of 10 coins. Every additional coin you collect will be held as well, but doesn't increase your max speed anymore. If you hit another driver, you lose 1 coin. If Lakitu needs to pick you up, you lose 2 coins. And if you're hit with an item by an opponent, you lose 4 coins. If you don't have any coins left and touch another driver, you'll also spin out. I don't like spinning out at 0 coins, but I like the coin mechanic in general, because it forces you to decide whether to drive a tight turn or collect coins which are out of your way. A rather odd mechanic of the Grand Prix mode is the life system. Nowadays, a strange feature, it forces you to retry the race if you didn't finish in the top 4. You get 3 lives in the beginning, and if you reach the same position 3 times, you get a single bonus one. This feature can be quite unfair though. If you place first, you get 9 points, the second place awards you 6 points, the third place 3 points, and the fourth place 1 point. So if you win the first 4 races, you'll have at least 12 points more than the driver in second place. But if you can't manage to reach a top 4 finish in the last race, you won't get a trophy and recognition for that. On the other hand, this feature can also be exploited. If you need to win the last race, or you are unhappy with your place in any race, simply restart it and you get another chance. So I could say, besides the need to get the most points, you also have to finish in the top 4 every race, otherwise you're not a true champion, according to the game at least. The loss of points instead of the retry would be the harsher consequence, in my opinion at least. The reason why the developers put it in could have been to provide a more arcade-like experience, similar to the way F-Zero implemented it. We also have to talk about another infamous mechanic, rubber banding. Rubber banding refers to a method of difficulty balancing where the opponents get stronger the further behind they are. Translated to Mario Kart, this means you can't get ahead of the competition. If you hit a driver in first place with an item, take his spot and drive perfectly, your opponent still catches up to you, since he gets an unfair speed boost and ignores all the rules you have to follow. The idea behind this technique is clever. It's supposed to present a challenge to you, but in this game it's simply too much, especially when combined with the item advantage the CPUs have, but we'll get to that. In time trials you simply drive against yourself and try to get a new personal best. It is also possible to save a ghost and race against it by holding L, R and Y and pressing X in the menu after the race. You can only hold 1 ghost per cartridge though, and it only saves if you drove well, didn't hit anything and your time was good enough. There was certainly room for improvement to make this more appealing, but the existence of this feature is nice nonetheless. Driving against a ghost is helpful to improve, at least in my experience. There's also a replay feature, which is really neat since it showcases what Mode 7 was capable of and provides unique views and camera angles. Definitely check it out. If you play in 2-player mode, you have the choice between classic Grand Prix, Match Race, where you race single tracks head to head without AI controlled opponents, therefore sprinkled with some white bullet builds, and the glorious Battle mode, where each one of you gets 3 balloons which have to be popped by hitting your opponent with items. This mode was really well done for the time and still has the capability to ruin your friendships today, just like it should be. Like every other Mario Kart game, this game truly shines in multiplayer, and if you have the chance, play it that way. The character selection is limited to 8 classic Nintendo characters who are sorted into 4 categories which are created to be as balanced as possible while still allowing for different playstyles and being distinctive designs. When controlled by the AI, every character has their own item which is the only one they'll use, but they can use it as often as they like, so it can be quite unfair, especially when you're pretty close to them the whole time, because then they'll use it all the time, which can get quite frustrating. Your character choice also determines who will be your main rival during the races, since every character has a designated antagonist. Mario and Luigi are the most balanced drivers. They have medium stats across the board, nothing out of the ordinary. Both use the star as their designated item, but they won't get a speed boost out of it, which doesn't help with making them less annoying to race against. If you play as Mario, your rival will be Donkey Kong Jr., and if you play as Luigi, Yoshi will challenge you. Princess Peach and Yoshi are of the same weight as the 2 brothers. Contrasting them, they are known for their brilliant acceleration, so that they are able to get going pretty fast, especially at the start of the race, but their top speed is the worst of the bunch, making races in the 150cc class extra challenging. If she's your rival, Peach will throw poisonous mushrooms at you, which shrink you if touched and let you grow big again if you drive through another one. If you play as the princess yourself, your main rival will fittingly be Bowser. As an opponent, Yoshi lays X, which lets you spin around if you hit them, similar to a green shell, with Koopa being your rival if you choose to play as the cutest and best character, Yoshi, yourself. Bowser and Donkey Kong Jr. are the heavyweight characters. Yes, Donkey Kong Jr. 10 years after the release of the Donkey Kong Jr. arcade game, Nintendo thought it was fitting to use him in this game instead of the real Donkey Kong. Since Donkey Kong Jr. is the offspring of the original Donkey Kong, who became known as Cranky Kong by the release of Donkey Kong Country, this Donkey Kong Jr. is probably the father of a modern Donkey Kong who took his spot in all of the subsequent games. He kinda still is the Donkey Kong of this game, and Nintendo seems to have lost interest in Donkey Kong Jr. anyways, diminishing him to be an Easter egg most of the time, if remembering him at all. But I like his shirt. These two heavyweights have the worst acceleration but the best top speed in the game, so using them is a challenge. Donkey Kong Jr. uses banana peels as his weapon of choice, and playing as the Kong yourself forces you to compete with Toad. Bowser, as an eye-controlled opponent, places fireballs, which move to the left and right, making them difficult to avoid and spin you around like the Yoshi egg. As Bowser, your rival will obviously be Mario. The last two characters are Koopa Troopa and Toad. These lightweights are the most beginner-friendly characters, with good acceleration but low top speed. Koopa naturally uses green shells if he competes with you, which he just places on the road or throws ahead of you, but doesn't use them as a projectile. Your main rival would be Luigi. Toad uses the same poisonous mushrooms as Peach and fittingly has to compete against her as well. I normally prefer to play as Yoshi. I mean, who wouldn't? Just look at him, he's just so dang cute. But especially in the 150cc class, or if you're a beginner, I would recommend using Toad or Koopa. After you finish the race, a unique result theme is played, depending on your character. Additionally, each character has a slightly different victory celebration at the award ceremony after the races. These aspects showcase the distinct personalities of every character, which is much appreciated. In the Japanese version, Peach and Bowser are drinking from their bottle of champagne, which is changed to a more PG-friendly celebration in all other versions. Don't drink and drive, kids! The first Mario Kart game already established Mushroom, Flower, Star and Special Cup. The first three are always available, with the Special Cup only being playable at 100cc and 150cc, being unlocked by beating every other cup. The tracks themselves are pretty basic and sorted into 8 distinct themes, mostly inspired by Super Mario World rather than being completely unique designs. All of them are completely two-dimensional and equipped with simple obstacles. But don't be fooled by that, the tracks can still be quite challenging and are harder to master than most modern tracks. The Mushroom Cup opens up with the first Mario Kart track ever, Mario Circuit 1. It's pretty much a circle with an edge in the second half, that's all. Enough for the start. Like all following Mario circuits, it is designed as a classic raceway, the only obstacles are a few pipes here and there. Following it is Donut Plains 1. This track consists of grassy terrain and has a little shortcut over the grass and 2 quite sharp turns in short succession. A solid improvement in difficulty. The third track, Ghost Valley 1, is pretty short and the first track to implement a feather shortcut. Besides that, it's a simple track with the added possibility of falling down into nothing but black darkness. Nice. The wooden ground is just surrounded by some falling walls, which can save you only once before falling off the track. Bowser Castle 1 is the penultimate track of the cup. It is pretty simple, has thwomps on it and many jumps across lava, where it's pretty easy to end up in the lava. The track is made of stone and has solid walls pretty much everywhere. As the final track we have Mario Circuit 2, a much more refined version of the Mario Circuit with a jump across the track near the end where it's possible to not make it and lose a ton of time. As added obstacles you have some oil slicks on the track which let you spin out. A pretty basic first cup and by far the easiest in the game. Another different theme instead of 2 Mario Raceways would have been welcome though. The Flower Cup begins with Choco Island 1. This one is pretty straightforward, you have to try your hardest to stay on the course, otherwise you get slowed down a lot. Choco Island is pretty similar to future desert tracks. Ghost Valley 2 is already much more challenging. Another feather shortcut as well as more possibilities to fall down the track. It's also tighter than the first one and you have to do your best to be in front the whole time because overtaking is tough in this one. Donut Plains 2 is pretty similar to the first one with the addition of a little lake you have to maneuver around and the introduction of Monty moles. They jump out of their holes and cling onto you if you're in the wrong spot, slowing you down a lot. Bowser Castle 2 has a dead end and many tight turns and jumps. It's one of the hardest tracks in my opinion. It's difficult to keep your top speed in this and the lava jumps are also a bit trickier. The final track, Mario Circuit 3, does a fine job in rewarding good driving and punishing mistakes, especially in its hairpin turn. Overall, a clear step up in difficulty and variety. The Star Cup starts with Cooper Beach 1. You drive around the sand of a tiny bit of land, but you can try to shorten your laps if you drive on the low water. Just be careful of the deeper water where you sink in if you're driving over it, slowing you down heavily. Overall, it's faster to drive on the low water and avoid the normal track completely, at least in my experience. The second track, Choco Island 2, is pretty simple. You see a possible mushroom shortcut at the start, besides that and a giant pile of mud, there's nothing to write home about. Vanilla Lake 1 is an interesting course. It's quite slippery and you have the choice to drive on the slower but easier to maneuver snow or the faster but more slippery ice. You also have to avoid cracks in the ice where you can fall into the water and little ice blocks which get destroyed when you hit them, so you can drive through that spot on the second try. After that, Bowser Castle 3, the final one, follows. It feels like a natural evolution to Bowser Castle, making it easier to fall into the lava and harder to find a perfect way through and getting an item on every lap. If you drive too fast, you fall into the lava way too easily, and there's also the chance to get completely blocked by thwomps, while the AI-controlled opponents just pass through them, which happens way too often to me. The Star Cup concludes with Mario Circuit 4. This track is similar to Mario Circuit 3, just a tad more difficult, with 2 hairpin turns in short succession and a less helpful mushroom shortcut near the end. In my opinion, the Star Cup is about as difficult as the Flower Cup and my personal favorite of the first 3, because I like the themes chosen for it. The Special Cup succeeded in being the hardest challenge. The first track, Donut Plains 3, is littered with Monty modes, sharp turns, and even has a destroyed bridge over a lake, where you easily get pushed into the water or simply fail to hop at the right time. It is followed by the easiest track of the Special Cup, Cooper Beach 2. Opposite to the first one, you have to drive around a little island, carefully avoiding some plants on the inside and avoiding the water on the outside. You also have a short section where you have to maneuver around deep water to not get dragged in. It is followed by Ghost Valley 3, which is nearly as difficult as Donut Plains 3. The track is cracked pretty much everywhere, the feather shortcut is by far the hardest to get right and the falling walls are rare, so you drop down even faster. If you're not in front the whole time, you're in for one hell of a ride. It's probably my favorite track in the game. The penultimate challenge is Vanilla Lake 2. This time you have a large body of water in the middle and even more destroyable ice blocks on the track. If you manage to drive relatively tight around the lake using the space the cracked icy road gives you, this track is also really easy, even easier than Vanilla Lake 1 and also one of my favorites. Just be aware of the slipperiness on the ice. The final showdown, of course, happens on Rainbow Road. This infamous track has no walls at all, so you can fall down into the black nothing at all times. Shining thorns are trying to crush you, or at least let you spin out if you touch them. And all this on a tight road with many sharp turns and pretty much no space to overtake anyone. I really enjoy this track. Modern remakes of it are always one of my favorites in the newer games, maybe because I was never able to beat it in this game as a kid. To conclude, the reputation of Rainbow Road was already clearly established with this game, I can promise you this much. So, as I said in the beginning, the Special Cup is a true challenge and sets the bar high for all future final challenges in the Mario Kart universe. It's also my favorite cup in the game. There are 4 battle courses in this game and they are all pretty basic. The first one is designed like a Donut Plains map and is the smallest of the bunch. The second one is a tad larger and inspired by the Cooper Beach tracks, with little pools of water as obstacles to maneuver around or hide behind. Track number 3 is Vanilla Lake inspired, an icy arena making it way more slippery and having destroyable ice blocks on the ground. The final one is the biggest and most fun in my opinion. It's modeled like a Mario Raceway and designed like a ring system, where you have to chase your opponents into the same lane. All of them are pretty similar and nothing out of the ordinary, but they still manage to get the job done and deliver a great battle mode experience. Tight arenas are the best battlefields anyway. Super Mario Kart is a well-made game for its time. It tries to work around its limitations by using the same track styles multiple times and using the Mode 7 effect to make the tracks more appealing than they otherwise would have been. The animation at the beginning of the game before selecting the game mode is also reused in the results screen after the races, which can be seen by the Press B claim in the background. It's just changed to a night aesthetic, typical for a Super Nintendo game. In my opinion, Super Mario Kart is the most difficult entry in the series, simply because it's not as easy to get into as modern Mario Kart games and the controls are not as polished and intuitive as nowadays. Also, if you're a talented driver in later entries, your skill doesn't translate well into this game. This is not the game's fault, the advancement of technology and game design forced it to be that way. Drifting is especially a pain to get right. I struggle a fair bit to win races in this game, at least in the 150cc class, even though I put many hours into this game and grew up with it. If you've never played Super Mario Kart, but enjoy the franchise as a whole, I would recommend you check it out, but don't set your expectations too high. It's nearly 30 years old, and it shows. After all, this game opened up many possibilities and invented the seemingly magic formula for the genre by simply fusing accessibility with a high skill ceiling. And at the time, it must have been a phenomenal game, delivering an experience you couldn't get any other way. And this is a big achievement, even in the early 90s, where the gaming landscape wasn't as populated as it is nowadays. Super Mario Kart can't keep up with its successors though, at least in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, it's a more than solid first draft. The passing of time simply did not do the game any favors. Driving is by far the most complicated to get into. The track selection is quite repetitive, only different themes instead of unique tracks, and an overall feeling of missing out on something. The limitation to 2 players is also pretty outdated for a game like Mario Kart. This game suffers from first game of a series syndrome, strengthened by the substantial growth the series has demonstrated gameplay-wise as well as reputation-wise, while still being the one series which dominates the genre. This is still the best Mario Kart for you, if you're a purist, if you dig Mode 7 racing games, love the Super Nintendo more than anything, or if you think Donkey Kong Jr. is the best character ever created by Nintendo. In regards to the Spiny Shell Cup, I grade the games on a scale of 1 to 10 Spiny Shells. These ratings are not the key aspects here though, so don't be deterred by them. They won't harm you, and the rational reasoning and arguments made throughout this retrospective are what really matters. I use them simply for the sake of streamlining the comparison at the end of the series. Opening the competition, Super Mario Kart receives the following assessment. The single player experience is a typical one for the series. Grand Prix mode works just as it's supposed to, but is as basic as it gets. Time trials are underdeveloped though. 4 out of 10. Multiplayer races are limited to only 2 players, but deliver great experiences nonetheless and are proof that this was the focus of this game. 4 out of 10. The tracks are 2-dimensional, while reusing the same themes. This was fine at the time and certainly impressive, but doesn't hold up all too well. In my eyes, it's the worst track selection of them all. 3 out of 10. The character selection is pretty limited as well, since Nintendo's character roster wasn't as developed back then, proven by the pick of Donkey Kong Jr. 4 out of 10. The item rotation is pretty basic and strongly influenced by the way the CPUs use the items, so it can't truly show its potential and is not that influential to the race results. 4 out of 10. Uniqueness, on the other hand, is a strength of Super Mario Kart. None of the sequels is truly like it, feeling-wise and appearance-wise, even though it's a simple, bare-bones kart racer by today's standards. 6 out of 10. Innovation is the fundamental idea behind this game. As I proclaimed, this game was the birth of the kart racer genre, so this is without a doubt the strongest category. 9 out of 10. I personally have a fair bit of nostalgia for this game, and it was important in my path as a gamer, but it's probably one of my 2 least favorite games of the franchise. 5 out of 10. Please don't kill me if you disagree with me. Super Mario Kart is probably the Mario Kart game which relies most heavily on good driving. The item roster is pretty simple, while the CPUs will only use one kind of an item and no projectiles at all, so impressive driving skills most certainly grant you the most success, since items don't pack that much of a punch in this game. That being said, becoming a truly great driver is also a true challenge in this game. To conclude, Super Mario Kart ignited one of the most successful and beloved franchises of all time, as well as the entire kart racing genre, and by that deserves a place in gaming history. Its successors built on the formula successfully and simply used the better hardware to their advantage. There's no shame in admitting this. I am already excited to revisit these games, and I'm curious how I feel about them after giving them a more critical look. Next in line is Mario Kart 64, which is still loved and praised today and introduced the third dimension to the series. And it's one of my personal favorites. That's all I have to say for now. What do you think about Super Mario Kart? Do you agree with my remarks, or am I completely wrong? Feel free to leave a comment down below to tell me if you agree with me, as well as to give me feedback so I can improve my content and myself. If you wish to support me even further, consider subscribing to my channel. I have been Lars, and I hope to welcome you in the lounge again soon.